2 or 3 very important things have happened that have reduced the demand for this. With any of these job roles, if you become very, very good, obviously you become S tier because everyone wants you. None of this means that one role is better than the other. It just means the demand and supply for these roles constantly changes. If you're not a very good one, you have been replaced by a $20 tool in the name of ChatGPT. It's not like you study one specific entrance exam, you know the questions, you know the answers. You have to keep trying stuff like this and then some things stick and then some things don't. Just so you know, every meal that you have ever had in your life is because of someone selling. This is the role that Reddit is going to slaughter me for, but let's take it on anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first tier rating video where it's a very interesting premise. And last week, the employees got together and they were asking each other, well, what's a really lucrative career for you to have in 2024 as a fresher? And eventually that question came to me and I was thinking about it. And I thought this is a good video to make. But as we were thinking through the video, I thought, you know what? This is not the right way to do it. Videos today not only have to add value to you, it also has to be entertaining. So in front of me, Athar from the team has gone out to everybody in the office and asked them, what do you think are the most lucrative roles in India in 2024 for a fresher? And we've got a list of some of them. I've only seen the first one. And my job is to rate these job roles for 2024 for freshers. Now, most of you might not know this, but I started my career in recruiting. I started a recruitment company when I was in my early 20s. And over the last decade, I would have hired, thousands of employees. And even now, we have a lot of employees that work with us across a broad range of roles. A good 60-70% of the company is young people, and a lot of them have this question on their heads, which is this the right role? What's the best, most lucrative role in 2024? So I thought, fine, I'll make a video about it, I'll make it entertaining, and there is one piece of nuance I want to tell you, which is that all of this only applies to 2024. Some of these job roles were hot in 2021. So this video, if I had made this in 2021, would have been very, very different. In 2024, it's a different video. And these are my personal opinions. You should feel free to disagree. And with any of these job roles, if you become very, very good, obviously you become S tier because everyone wants you. But this is more for freshers, entry-level job roles, and hopefully it is useful to you. Without much further ado, let's take the first one, which I've already seen, which is product manager. We have a lot of product managers in India now, especially on Twitter. So I'll tell you the big problem with product managers, okay? Especially in India. I think a lot of product managers are unconsciously doing project management. And I'll tell you the difference. A project manager is somebody who says, this is the scope of the project, here are the 10 things we should do, and this person goes out and puts together a full package. After talking to people, after doing research, after figuring out what features are required, this person puts down all these features in a document, or in some cases actually makes an entire Figma file out of it, something that your developers can see, and then your developers and designers actually sit together to make the product real. Now understand the attraction of product management, right? Which is, oh, I get to write this document on what we should build, and I get to control designers and developers and tell them this is what you need to build. But you know what? Most of the time, you're entering a job saying you're going to be a product manager, but end up doing project management where somebody else is doing the requirements collection and figuring out what to build. You are just writing the documents for it. And that difference, the difference between a product manager and a project manager, is that a product manager has to make decisions on what to build, not how to build it, but what to build in the first place. Because one of the biggest wastes of time, and I've run a software company before this, one of the biggest wastes of time is building the wrong thing. So you build something and you think users really want it, and then you build it out and you realize nobody wants it. So you as a company have not only wasted money on the product manager's salary, you also wasted money on the engineer's salary because you've gone in the wrong direction. The direction matters. And the problem with being a fresher and doing product management is it's very hard to know right off the bat when you're 20 or 21 years old what direction a product or company should take. Because a lot of the things we believe straight out of college are not how the real world works. In fact, most of the time, especially when building consumer products, product managers, especially fresher product managers that we've hired, believe that, the consumer will want this feature or that feature, or this is how they are, this is their profile. But in reality, especially with consumer products, most of these people are just, sitting on a toilet or sitting in the metro station, they're like scrolling, and then your notification popped up, they clicked on it for half a second and then they went out. So understanding how users behave takes a long time. And that actually comes from life experience, talking to a lot of people, building some things, seeing that fail, etc., etc. So for that reason, and for the fact that when you're very, very young, it's hard to know what people really want, and that takes some time, I grade this a B. which is true product management, not project management, is actually not wise to get into until you have one or two real core skills, either design or development or something else, because true product management requires you to have taste, and taste is developed over time. Until that point, it's a bit hard to do product management. Again, these are my thoughts. You might not necessarily agree with it, but in my rankings, product manager for freshers is a B in 2024. The next one is UI UX designer. So there's a very interesting story I want to tell you about UI UX designers. In my last company, we had quite a few, and we were building a purely digital product. And one of the interesting things that we noticed was that in the building phase, in the first 1.5 years when we were building out the product, we had a significant use for this role. We had a significant use for somebody who would go build out the UI based on the product manager's specifications, change that, look at every single screen, build them out, thinking about how the user flows through the app, etc., etc. But after the core product was done, the core software product was done, we started seeing less and lesser use over time. And that's the moral of the story I want to tell you, which is when you're an early stage startup, you actually need a lot of designers, especially UI UX designers, right? To build out your app or to build out your product. But as you become slightly more mature as one of these product companies, you have less use for this, or the designer spending far too little amount of time per day actually doing their job because it's really not required beyond a certain point. So the UI UX designer in India is a role which follows a very strong power law. If you are working for a company like Cred, where they're shipping a feature every week, this is a great job to have as a fresher. But if you're joining a company where they don't have this much use, and if you're not going to a top 50, 100 unicorn startup, I don't think this is a good long-term role for you to be in unless you're looking at switching every single year. If you really want to be successful as a UI UX designer in India and not work for these top 50, 100 companies, you must be looking at opportunities abroad, because there are some really good opportunities abroad and they will pay you well because it's expensive to hire a good UI UX designer in the US or in Canada or any of those places. But for India, I think because of the limited job pool, or the job pool being limited to a bunch of really cool companies, and getting into those companies, the competition is getting harder and harder. And even those companies over time are shipping slightly lesser than before, and they're already saturated. Good UI UX designers are already sitting in those companies doing fantastically well for themselves. I think it's a little bit hard to break into, which is why I'm going to put it in grade B. That doesn't mean we don't need UI UX designers. It just means it's competitive and it's a very specific segment of companies that this is in high demand for right now. Next, this is the role that Reddit is going to slaughter me for, but let's take it on anyway. It's a full stack developer. Just so you know, we have a lot of full stack developers in the company. I started my career sort of, at least the professional side of what I did, building apps, building that time web apps. And I think being a full stack developer or being a developer is very close to my heart. It is probably the most important thing I've ever done in my early years. But is it a good job role in 2024? My answer is, let's find out, is... Let me explain. So here's the thing, okay? Companies need full stack developers, and there's lots of openings for full stack developers. But 2 or 3 very important things have happened that have reduced the demand for this. There's a very interesting graph about developer hiring from the US. So sometime in 2020 and 2021, there was this interesting phenomenon that took place called ZIRP, which stands for Zero Interest Rate Phenomenon. Very interesting concept, okay? So what banks in the US started doing is they started setting the short-term interest rates to 0. And they did this to stimulate growth, right? To stimulate economic growth. They're like, no, don't put money in FDs, don't put money in safe bank assets, go and invest in the world. So a lot of financial investors went out and started taking risks. So what started happening is, because the bank interest rates were not really attractive for many of these investors, they started taking their money and throwing it at riskier propositions, like investing in startups. So many of these investors went and invested with VCs, like they gave their money to VCs. They became something called limited partners. And the VCs went and deployed money in lots of startups. But the VC dynamics, it's a business where you invest in 100 things, and as you all know, maybe 3 or 4 of those things work out. These risk-taking investors invested in a lot of tech startups, and the reason they invested in tech startups is because tech startups have crazy growth. If a tech startup works, it can go from nobody to hero in like 3, 5, 10 years. That's very quick compared to an old school industrial manufacturing thing that takes decades to even get anywhere, right? So people saw a lot of crazy growth with companies like Facebook or Salesforce or any of the others. So they said, let's replicate it again. The only problem, too much capital flowed in 2021. And when too much capital flowed in, supply-demand economics went up and down. This is true for India as well, because a lot of that foreign capital actually came to India. A lot of the top unicorns you know today have raised a lot of money from outside of India because of this ZERP phenomenon. Those people needed to place capital somewhere. India looked like an exciting place, so they said, let's go try. The problem with that, and I was there during that environment, and we were trying to hire developers, we were trying to hire React engineers during that environment, and it was super competitive. Now, you might not remember it, but I remember it pretty well back then. We had a team of almost 15 engineers back then, and even to hire a single junior React engineer took time. There was very little supply. All the other companies were picking up supply. Even if they didn't need engineers, they'd pick them up and they'd be like, hey, we need these people. And companies like us, if we wanted some of those engineers, we had to cough up. Those engineers were in such demand that many of them were not even respecting offer letters. It was a very weird environment, and I don't blame them at all for this, because they were getting all the opportunities in the world and everything was coming to them. So rates went up, supply went down, and many of those engineers started going on the internet and saying, this is a great job to be in, you all should be engineers, and started making courses around it. And this is weird for me to say, because software is a very vast field. You can do lots of things in software. But this building an app or building a web platform became very, very popular. And we had a lot of newbie engineers try and say, I want to go be in this industry. I want to go work hard and become an engineer and study everything that's required and get into one of these startups. The problem is we had too many of those people come out. And a lot of colleges also started pushing people there, and we now have this huge surplus of full stack developers, or actually developers in India. And then, like any phenomenon, it came to an end. So a lot of those startups that had raised quite a bit of money started dying. A lot of them started going through hard times. And during hard times, engineers don't really increase the sales of the company. So these companies started spending more on advertising or more on conserving the capital in the bank. So they started letting go of many of these engineers. And we had a huge dip. And at the same time, we had a new set of engineers come out who were available to work and saying, I will do it at much cheaper. So by just inflating supply and the demand falling, we had a crisis. Couple that with the fact that ZERP went away. A lot of the investors had lost a lot of money and they said, no, I don't want to keep taking this foolish risk. So they went back to investing in the safe way. Interest rates went up in the US. So combined with all of that, startup funding went through a winter. In fact, 2023 and 2024 were probably the worst years to be a startup founder, because raising capital was difficult even if you had traction. Investors were only going after very, very proven, slightly more mature companies, and early stage risk was dwindling. Who suffered? It was the full stack engineers. See, here's the thing, okay? We still hire so many full stack engineers. If you're a full stack engineer, we are still hiring. It's a great job role to be in. But if you're a mid full stack engineer, if you're not the best in your industry, there's a lot of competition for you. In fact, competition for a job for full stack engineers is now reminding me of entrance exams. We have a hiring platform where we put up a job role for full stack engineers and a bunch of other roles. And the full stack developer role has 1,000 applications, whereas another role where we were hiring for a VFX artist has just 3. So it just goes to show you this is a very, very competitive space. And if you're good, this rating doesn't matter to you. If you're a fresher, remember that this is competitive. Therefore, I'm giving this a C. So let's check out the next job role. It is content writer. So the biggest threat for a content writer is if you're not a very good content writer, whether you're writing for SEO, or whether you're writing for YouTube, or whether you're writing for a blog, if you're not a very good one, you have been replaced by a $20 tool in the name of ChatGPT. And at this point, I would say you would be able to find 3 or 4 models for free. Claude is free at this point, right? So it's very hard to be a bad content writer in this market, because you're competing with literally a tool that costs almost nothing. But if you're a good content writer, then you will excel. And the difference between a bad content writer and a good content writer is not about English. It's not about your writing skill. It is about domain expertise. I'll give you an example. If you ask a really good content creator who knows nothing about Valorant to write an article on Valorant, the article that person writes is going to be ooper say. But all the things that people want to watch, all the things that people want to read, the reason you're still on this video is because of nuance. Nuance means more than meets the eye. What do you know that's not just surface level? What do you know that's deeper? What do you know that you have insight or experience in? And for many content writers, they're fresh out of college, so therefore they have no insights in any space, so the writing is generic, which is unfortunately replaced by ChatGPT or any of the other LLMs. But the minute you can go deep, then you win. So I feel like instead of you looking at your role as just, I'm a content writer, you should be looking at your role as, I'm a researcher. We actually have a lot of content writers, and the really good ones are great at research. They can go very, very deep. In fact, one of the first conversations I had with Ganesh from Think School, I realized not only is this guy good at writing scripts, He's so good at research. He can spend hours and weeks really going deep into a topic and saying, okay, this is how it works. Okay, this is what happened. I see it with Achina as well, right? With everything that she's doing at AV. They go really, really deep. Whereas there's a bunch of content writers who are not going that deep and just writing whatever comes to their mind, or going to Google, finding 3 articles and just putting them together. I think domain expertise really matters. All of us want to read and watch really quality content. But for freshers, because you don't have life experience in a specific space, and content writing is really rewarding your life experience and what you know about a specific space, I would rate this a C. However, if you're somebody very obsessed about a specific space, like finance, you love finance. I don't understand much about finance, but if you love finance and you're willing to go very, very, very deep, and you've been, doing that stuff for 1 year or 2 years, and you're also good at English and writing, this is a great job for you. But at that point, you're not really a content writer, you're a finance subject matter expert, and that's how you should pitch yourself. All right, next one is a VFX and 3D artist. Again, I love this role. We're doing some VFX stuff right now, where we're trying to composite me into a completely CG scene. The hard part is getting the lighting right, getting the camera tracking right. It's a very fun role, but in terms of jobs in the market today, I would rate this a C. And this is one thing I want you to get from this, right? None of this means that one role is better than the other. It just means the demand and supply for these roles constantly changes. And right now, the demand for a VFX and 3D artist is low. But with movies like Kalki coming out, I think this is going to improve over time. But as of today, if you had to go through a 2, 3, 4-year degree, whatever it is, and then end up getting one of these jobs, it's not going to be a very well-paying one, unless, of course, you get to the top and build your own studio and whatnot. That being said, this is a very interesting role for us. So if you want to actually be a VFX 3D artist, please come join us. If you have knowledge of Blender, if you have experience with tools like Axisymmetry or Nuke, or even After Effects for compositing, we would love to work with you. But I don't think we have too many job roles open for this. We want to give some VFX services to our clients, but we're not hiring like 50 of these people, right? Awesome. The next role is a content creator. Again, power law dictates strongly in the role of content creator, which means that if you're a top 1% content creator, you're not watching this video, you're probably producing one and making a lot of money. Congratulations. But if you're not doing well, now the problem is that there are 1.4 billion people in this country, and many hundreds of millions are creating content every day. Most of them will give up by their 10th or 15th video. Being a content creator is hard. It's worse odds to get through than entrance exams, right? It's harder to be a successful content creator than it is to get through IITs, and it's a very ambiguous path. It's not like you study one specific entrance exam, you know the questions, you know the answers. You have to keep trying stuff like this, and then some things stick and then some things don't. Very ambiguous role. I think though that if you're a content creator and you join companies today, and you can be a content creator for those companies, that is a very exciting role. So if I had to place this as you being a content creator by yourself, doing it by yourself, doing it for a living, running a company, I would place it a D if D existed, or really, really low along this tier list. But because there is now a very clear opening for content creators at companies, and every company is dead serious about YouTube. People are having ad fatigue. The only way that companies used to attract customers is through advertising, through either print and then TV and then Facebook and Instagram advertising. You are getting tired of seeing Ranveer Singh in another ad yet again on your Instagram feed. The only way around it is for companies to create organic content, and therefore, if you're a content creator for a company, I will put this at an A. Now, I know how easy it is to just screenshot this and say, haha, how is he saying content creator is A and full stack developers C? That's why you have to watch the full video so you get the context. Next is an AI ML engineer. Now, I think there are 3 ways to divide the AI world, right? Like at least engineers in the AI world. There's people who are doing research, who are going out and they're trying things and they're writing papers on those things. They're purely academics. And I don't think being an AI researcher is a particularly commercially rewarding role, especially in India. You'd have to sort of, work under a professor, and they're not very commercially minded. It's a very status-driven game, very noble and very valuable. And we have seen really valuable things come out of this, like Wave Tulip, which came out from IIIT. So researcher is good, but I don't think it makes you that much money. The next AI-related role is probably an AI/ML engineer, where you're training models. Over time, as these larger models have got good, like a GPT-4o or a Claude, building your own models doesn't make so much sense. Like, there was a lot going on in computer vision models, But now a GPT-4o or Claude can just see a picture you send it and do a much better job. The reason is because they're trained on a lot more data than you could get your hands on. And because these models are multimodal and they have really long context, it is a little hard to come out and say, I will build my own model and be commercially successful on it. Remember, there's this huge set of people on Twitter who are fine-tuning these models, building these models. We were like that last year. Right? We are fine-tuning models. We said maybe there's a commercial value here, but we didn't really find too much commercial value there. It's a good engineering exercise. You train a model, you see the loss curves go down, you're happy, right? And you're like, I solved it. I know I can do this. But will that lead to money? Do companies pay for this right now? No, right? Or some companies do, and they have lots of data and very specific use cases. And getting into some of these companies is very competitive. The third kind of engineers, and we made fun of them last year, was people who are building wrapper startups, which is you're taking one of these APIs and you're solving a problem. But unfortunately, if you really look through the last 1 year, except for maybe the top 10 AI companies, right, who have raised hundreds of millions of dollars each, most of the people who've really made money are the people who are doing things like, I have a bunch of PDFs, I want to chat with it. And these are the freelancers, ththese are people doing it by themselves, running their own indie companies. And even at companies, a company has a problem, they don't really care about what tech you use. They have a problem. They're like, I have a lot of data on this. Can you give me some insights out of this? Or, I want to create content and, I don't have a presenter. Can AI make a presenter for me? So using existing models and building out solutions for companies solving real problems that they have, which they are currently spending money on, is valuable. Like I said, there's 7.1 billion people with mobile phones in the world, and there are only 20 million or 30 million Midjourney users. So many companies in the world have not been exposed to even the most available AI tools. Now, obviously, just using tools is not what an AI ML engineer does, but what I'm saying is that there is a spectrum, and the people who use the models and the APIs to build useful things are right now seeing the most commercial success. We hire a lot of these people. Companies really want us to build some of these solutions out for them. Therefore, I'm putting this at an A. And of course, if you're a great researcher or a great model trainer and you find the right fit of company, you're going to make a killing, right? Whether in India or abroad. And if you're one of the coveted few that can do research or build your own models, there is no lack of demand for you. There is an incredible amount of demand. And many of those people, at least in the US, are now building and running their own companies. They're giving it a shot. They're seeing what happens if they commercialize some of this. We might realize over the years that these are probably far better as jobs than they are as startup risks. Because as startup risks, you're supposed to de-risk everything from day one. You're supposed to play the lowest risk way, use the third-party models, don't even do anything by yourself, get some traction, show that the customers want something, and then slowly replace the stack with your own models and your own technology. That's what you're supposed to do, so I don't think it's the best startup risk, but is it a good job? Absolutely. Next is a digital marketing specialist. Yeah, everyone's curious about where I'm going to put this, but I think I'm going to put it here. Sorry, we've run out of space on the C track, but I'll tell you why. Running an ad, it used to be hard several years ago. Today, if you ever run an ad on Facebook or Instagram in the recent years, everything is auto-optimized. There's very little rocket science apart from the creative itself. And I would argue that it's far better to be a content creator and think about what creative will run, what will people want to watch, versus something like this, right? A digital marketing specialist where you're saying that, I'm only good at running ads. Now, a digital marketing specialist is supposed to do more than just ads, but this debate about should we do organic content or should we pay for advertising, most companies are going to do both, so there's still scope for this, but it's also a very competitive space where Google and Facebook are automatically doing the things that you are supposed to do. They're automatically seeking out the right audiences. Installing Pixel is not really rocket science, so I'm unsure of what these people would do, and it's better for you to be a content creator with some understanding of how to run ads or how to, do paid campaigns versus, be this and then figure out, I don't know how to create content. I don't know what people want to watch. So ultimately, it's about what do people want to watch. And as being a content creator, you can gain that life experience right by going through your Instagram feed and seeing what's working for other people. It's the one space where you don't really need too much domain expertise to get started. Next is sales executive. Sales executive. Now, there's been a lot of talk about how AI is going to replace sales execs. I don't think that's true. I think the feeling when you go shake somebody's hand, I'm talking about in person, shake somebody's hand or talk to them and understand their context, AI is far away from doing that. AI can speak well, AI can mimic a voice well, but if you've had like a long conversation, like many turns, like 20, 30 turns with AI, you'll realize at some point people can tell they're talking to a bot. And it doesn't really understand people's context as well as you'd like to, at least today. We're talking about 2024 with all of this. But a sales exec who can go out and win bread for the company, who can actually make money for the company, that's S tier. You generate cash. I'll tell you one thing, okay? And India has grown up being a country that hates sales, that hates the idea of going out and talking to people and taking money from them. Just so you know, every meal that you have ever had in your life is because of someone selling. Either your dad or your mom or your grandfather or your dad's boss or your dad's colleague. Sales is the only thing either directly or indirectly putting bread on your table. And people tend to forget this. With digital jobs, nobody wants to do the job where you're doing 10 calls a day. I do a lot of calls a day, right? Nobody wants to do the job. It sucks. But the people who can, who are like, everyone else is going to these jobs that look attractive but is behind a desk. But this job where I actually have to call people and get rejected a lot of times, this is the job where, in my opinion, if you're a fresher and you're really motivated and not distracted to go out and do something else, this is a great job to have. And to every company, a sales rep that creates money out of thin air, no company cuts off that person. Like, think about it, okay? Let's say a sales rep was generating 5 lakhs a year in revenue, but their salary was 4 lakhs. In any crisis, I would not lay off that person because that person is bringing the company money. Very secure role. And if you can do well, because salespeople are coin operated, they get commissions on every deal. Most good companies should give you commission on sales. There is no cap to how much money you can make. It's the closest to being an entrepreneur, right? Where you're earning your own bread and every sale, like everything depends on you and the brand of the company that you're working for. One piece of advice, and I kind of alluded to it, but one piece of advice for sales is if you join a company where people already have a demand for that product or service, then you'll find your job much easier. If you join a very, very fast growing company and become a sales rep there, you'll make a lot more money than joining a bad company with a bad product because you'll have to work harder to sell. So a lot of salespeople say, "Maine kiya." The product and service matters far more, and the customer demand. Are customers really tearing their hair out to use your thing? If they are, your sales job will be easy. Do you have a lot of distribution? Do you have a lot of marketing? Then your sales job will be easier. It's truly hard mode if you're going to an unknown company with a bad product. So I think the hardest thing in this job is choosing what company to work for. Luckily, all companies, even the best ones, are constantly hiring people who can sell and bring them money. So this is not a job role where you have a lot of competition. If you can actually generate money, you will be added on top along with so many other sales reps to be able to do your job. Unfortunately, India has demonized this, and we've seen this with Byju's and a bunch of other companies where sales reps are like, sales, bad. But sales is what runs our economy. And ultimately, if you want to be really successful in life, this is what you have to crack. Therefore, it is S tier out of respect for the job and for everything that it has put on the table for all of us. Next, we have a fan favorite, video editor. I think the entire reason video editors have blown up is not even about skill. I think it's just blown up because the demand has blown up. So our learnings on this is that Jio really made India consume a lot of video content. And now, most of you are spending anywhere between 3 to 5 hours a day scrolling video content, either reels or shorts or whole YouTube videos. Even on Twitter, it's a bunch of videos now. So somebody needs to be producing all those videos. And while there are content creators who are producing these videos, in the last 1 or 2 years, we've started seeing a lot of companies produce videos too. We produce videos for a lot of companies. There are a lot of companies who are our clients on our content side of the business, right? Like Zoho, Zerodha, many of the others. And there are a lot of editors on their teams. So it's a very high demand role, very low supply. Because for some reason, nobody wants to be a video editor. For some reason, it feels like an unsexy role because 5 years ago, it was associated with Bollywood and you only had a small bunch of jobs that you could get. I think that has changed. And because of the supply-demand economics, same thing that happened in 2021 with the full-stack developers, I think video editor demand has just shot through the roof. And even we, despite the fact that Achina, my wife, runs a video editing cohort and I'm able to hire people from her cohort, there's still a lack of good video editors in India. And I know some of the salaries that those people in the cohorts are getting. They are being paid through the nose. It feels unfair if you're sitting as a TCS employee after working 4 years and then finally getting a job to see that a video editor is making more than you, but it is a true fact. And it is not true because that skill is better or this skill is worse. That's the wrong way to think about it. It's because of supply and demand. There's a lot of demand and there's low supply. And many of these companies are serious about channels. And because of short form, one more thing that short form content has done, and it's very important for you to understand this. With long form, a person could consume, let's say a 10-minute video, right? A person could consume maybe 5 videos or 10 videos after which they get exhausted. In that same, let's say 1 hour period where you consume 6 videos, you are now able to consume 60 shorts. So the number of successful content creators and companies have gone up 10x just because content has become short form. Most people have not realized this, we have, right? Short form content allows more winners, and because of that, there are more editors that are required for those channels. And therefore, because of the supply-demand economics, and because I've seen some of the salaries coming out of AVTV, I would give this an A. As you can see, I'm not choosing any of these roles based on how hard they are or what the skill set required is. We haven't even spoken too much about that. I'm picking these based on supply demand in the market right now. Now, many of you might argue, well, 5 years later, it might not be useful. A developer will make far more money over 5 years than a video editor. But you know what? We have seen that not to be true. With video editors, and we have a bunch of video editors, we have video editors that work for this channel too. They started out as video editors, but eventually, just like product managers, over time, anyone can be a product manager. You could have started in design and then you can move to product management. You could have started in something else like development and then move to product management. It's the same with video editors. You start as a video editor and then you can head marketing. You're basically playing to be the CMO, because if everything is video, then marketing is also video, right? You are not reading as much text as you used to. You're not reading books anymore. So if everything is video, the best way to be a CMO or a marketer or anyone in the marketing department is to first start as a video editor. So we're seeing a lot of that, and also there's another role where you could be a channel producer. You can just manage the entire channel, which is a very lucrative role today, because I know how many creators are hiring for this, I know how many companies are hiring for this, and they are throwing serious cash at it, which is why it's here. Now I know some of you will make fun of me for this, and I don't mind, but I have a much clearer view of the supply-demand economics from here, where we work with a lot of companies doing this. Also, I'm a little bit biased because we are hiring many of these people, and if you're a video editor, we probably have like 40 job roles open for you. I'm not even kidding, 40 job roles open for you. It's just supply-demand that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about skill. The next one is robotics engineer. You know, till now we've covered only digital jobs. I only wanted to cover digital jobs because if you go into offline jobs, there are so many more jobs, right? There's driver and so many other things. But I think, robotics engineer is the one non-digital job. I think everything else is digital. It's the one non-digital job, but I'll still take it anyway. We shouldn't have put this here, but being a robotics engineer in India is a good idea. There's a podcast with Lex Fridman and one of the founders of Boston Dynamics, where he says the only real money in robotics is selling robots for factory, industrial use cases of robots. This is going to change. This is something where I'd place it at a maybe C today. Again, because of supply demand, not because this is a bad role. I place it at a C, but at some point, maybe in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, this is going to be an S. Right? Because there's also going to be a level of abstraction. So right now, when we do robotics experiments, we use something called ROS, which is Robot Operating System. And over time, what will happen is that will be abstracted. It'll get easier and easier to control these robots. Many of them will come with SDKs that you can use. There'll be a reactification of it where it gets pretty easy to enter the field. There'll be lots of documentation. Really, documentation sucks. Most of it for the robot we got is in Chinese. So over time, that's going to change. And over time, this is going to be an S tier role. But for now, I'm not even going to put it on the board because it's just too early to talk about this. Last, but not the least, is the actor. Unfortunately, it's not a good job for you to be in. Being an actor is super risky. It has lower odds than being a content creator as well. Most actors are failures. The 30 people that are very, very successful are insanely successful, and there's no middle layer. In content creation, there's a middle layer, there's a layer 3, there's a layer 4, where everyone's making some kind of money. There's micro creators making some kind of money, mid creators that are making some kind of money. You won't see micro actors making too much money, right? There's movie, there's TV, and then everyone else makes nothing or is background actor or background dancer, where you don't know when your next paycheck or meal is going to come from. So therefore, I will put this at a C, because if you're 20 years old and you're taking the risk to be an actor, it is foolish. But sometimes some of those foolish decisions can be great stories, and you might be the next Shah Rukh Khan. So I don't want to discourage you. Again, this is more about supply demand. This is not about your skill sucks. I know I have to repeat that many times because I know how the internet thinks. But yeah, this is it. I hope this was useful. It's a very, very long video. But I hope this was useful, and I hope you take away something for it. Make sure you subscribe. And we're going to be doing a lot more videos like this for different things. The next one we're going to do is on AI tools. We're going to rate all the top AI tools, and I'll give you context because I use them every day. Yeah, I hope you love it. Bye.